Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 22 of Pumpin Iron, the review series for the classic muscle cars of Gran Turismo 6. And in this episode we're featuring another vehicle which, like the Corvette, can sometimes be slightly controversial. Not only in the way it drives, but also in the way it's classified. The car is of course the Shelby Cobra. Massively iconic American car, one of my personal favourite classic designs, one of my personal favourite classic cars as well, and pretty much the definition of muscle. The car looks like it is on steroids, and it essentially is. They took the British AC Ace and slammed a massive engine and pumped up arches, so in effect this is about as close as a car can get to being literally steroid injected. But is it really a muscle car? That's the question, because I can completely understand why some people would consider it not to be a muscle car. Because really, it's more of a sports car, many people would say, than a muscle car. And as I said, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that, but it's my opinion that this car is a bit like the classic Corvette, in that it runs a fine line, really, between muscle and sports. And although I would say, yes, it certainly is a sports car, I would also say it's a muscle car. It's one of those vehicles which, in my opinion, can be genuinely classified as both, just like the classic Corvette. Now, with that out of the way, the other way in which this car can be controversial is the way it drives, especially the way it handles. And you'll see more on that later on in the video when I had a little bit of a mishap, let's just say, with driving around Le Mans. Now, the Cobra is known for being one of the quickest American classics ever as well, and also one of the quickest classic cars in the world. And that's not too surprising, considering it's got a massive engine strapped into a ridiculously lightweight body. It's a very British way of approaching performance from its weight and size point of view, not very American at all, which, as I said, considering it is based on a British car, isn't surprising. The way it delivers its power, though, is very typically American. Big capacity, big lazy power and torque that just gives you effortless grunt through its entire performance range. Now, in the case of this car, it's the Cobra 427. There's also a Cobra 289 and various other models, but this is the only regular Cobra. We've got the Daytona as well, of course, but this is the only regular Cobra that we have on the game. I would personally love to have the 289 on the game as well, which is slightly more toned down visually and has a smaller engine. But this car has a 427 or 7 litre V8, which you can supercharge up to 785 horsepower and 749 pound-feet of torque. So as far as specs go, it's a pretty typical muscle car spec sheet, what you'd expect from a Charger or a Mustang, etc. The way this car sets itself apart, though, is the weight. This car with the full weight loss package only weighs 902 kilos, significantly undercutting any of the other conventional muscle cars by at least 100 kilos, if not more. Now, the PP is also pretty high on this one at 601 for a muscle car, but still that's not that much higher than, say, a Cuda, which sits at 599, and that is lower than some others like the Tornado and the Red Devil. So it's pretty well placed, I would say, the Cobra. As far as performance, it's fantastic in a straight line. Everyone knows that it is. It has incredible acceleration thanks to the massive power-to-weight ratio of 870 horsepower per tonne, and the top speed at around 265, 270 without NOS or draft isn't exactly lacking. That makes it one of the quickest classics, one of the quickest muscle cars in the game. Now, the only downsides I would say to the Cobra are the handling, as you'll see in a moment, and also the price. Now, the handling is fairly well known. People know that the Cobra is a challenging car. It's kind of like the TVR Speed 12 and the Lancia Stratos, vehicles which have a reputation for being challenging to get the best out of. Cars which less experienced drivers tend to try and avoid at all cost. But the funny thing about vehicles like that is they tend to actually be incredibly successful in real life. The Cobra was a very strong racing machine, and so was the Lancia Stratos. The TVR Speed 12 was plagued by reliability issues, but there was nothing wrong with its performance, that's for sure. So cars like that may be, yes, more difficult to get a hang of, but when you do, they really are worth the effort. They're incredible machines, and the Cobra is certainly a good example of that. It's incredibly quick at virtually any PP level, and it's a brilliant car to take up against other muscle cars, more conventional box body muscle cars. So the only real downside is the price, which is, as I said, over 500,000 credits, 530,000 to be exact. But considering this car's iconic nature, and that it is also a premium, and how competitive it is, I would say that it actually is worth that price. I would not, however, recommend buying the Chrome. I would recommend avoiding that at all costs. So, if you're looking for an incredibly strong but slightly challenging all-round muscle car, then the Cobra is the perfect car for you. So that's it for this episode. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.